Hare Krishna, dear devotees. I would like to welcome all for today's thematic studies of Gita and Kural by Bhakta Dr. Tineshwaran. All right. So before that, we'll do this invocation. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militamena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvashesha Shunyavadi Pasachare Starine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Ram Rama Rama Hare Hare. So on this auspicious day on 7th February, all right, I know that most of you are still Lataji after this fantastic Thaipusam festival. So we supposed to do this program last week, Saturday, but of course, when all of us are so busy, so busy with cooking that feast, in Ipoh, we cook around more than 2,500 people and all this. So we postponed the program today. By right, today is supposed to be our weekly Srimad Bhagavatam class. But when Dr. Tineshwaran came out with this idea, and I was like very impressed. I was thinking this is a very important subject, and he's going to refute so many so-called belief system. And I was telling that we should get it done as soon as we can. So today was the day. And okay, so at the same time, we'd like to welcome Lakshmi Mataji, Nanda Devi Mataji, Jagadishwari Govalan, okay, Mataji, RC Mataji, GUU, Yi Prabhu, and Amuda Mataji, okay. So more and more people will be joining in soon, okay, soon. Oh, okay, Hare Krishna. I think you're coming for the first time, is it, Lakshmi Mataji? Have I seen you before?
No, Prabhu, I have been. Actually, I was listening to our Guru Maharaj class the other day.
Oh, I see. All right. Yes.
Listening.
Yes. Okay. Actually, it's a good fortune that we managed to have Guru Maharaj to come and address the devotees. It was very exciting. Yes.
Excited. Yeah. Thank you, Prabhu.
In fact, when I sent Guru Maharaj, I was telling, thanking him. And he so humbly said, "Thank you for engaging me in service." I was like speechless. Wonderful devotee.
Yeah, exactly.
My first encounter with Guru Maharaj was around 20 over years ago. When I was sweeping the floor, suddenly there's one, a brahmachari was sleeping in the middle of that, the place I was sweeping. So I went and told him, "Excuse me, Prabhu, can you just kindly get up? I need to sweep the floor." When he suddenly got up and I saw the thing on his seat, I said, "Oh my God, you're supposed to be Swamiji, right, Maharaj?" Then he just smiled. That's the first encounter. Down to earth, humble.
Yeah, exactly, Prabhu.
Yeah, and we did a lot of program with him. In fact, he used to come for our Padayatra. Once we had like a Padayatra festival for I think 1 week. So he used to follow us. We used to take our deity and put behind a wagon, and we go and we'll be singing kirtan, and he'll be like going and distributing, knocking all the doors and giving away prasadam. So such a
the same. I noticed that also. He always liked to join us wherever we go.
exactly.
So he's a nice person, you see.
Yeah. So anyway, I was very happy to be connected with him after so long. All right. So
thank you, Prabhu.
For my pleasure, Mataji. My pleasure. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Okay. So without further delay, so I would like to introduce Dr. Tineshwaran. Dr. Tineshwaran, I mean, for those who are seeing him for the first time, Dr. Tineshwaran, I've been a devotee for the last, I think, around how many, 5-10 years, right? So he was just another, what they call onlooker devotee. So, but recently after that, we did this Gita Gyan program in 2021. So there's a time that he got something like awakened. And after that, he went into this studies of Sanskrit. He fell in love with Sanskrit first. Then after that, I was telling him, why not you try Bhakti Sastri? So eventually he did Bhakti Sastri, and he waiting for his graduation day. All right. Actually, I think he went through. He passed everything. Just waiting for the graduation. And meanwhile, I was telling him that you should start doing these thematic studies. All right. That means thematic study means you take a theme from Bhagavad Gita and compare with all other subjects. All right. So for the past few days, I mean, I think this is the fourth class, if I'm not mistaken, right? So the first class was very nice. That goodness is not good enough, and all these kind of very innovative ideas he came out with. But the most exciting part is when he start to, his biggest goal is to break open that the DMK what they call ideology. Okay, for those who are non-Tamils, DMK means it's a political party in South India which is very atheistic, right? And most of the Tamil-speaking people, I mean, I shouldn't say most, but some of the Tamil-speaking people are into that kind of thought. There's almost into atheistic kind of view. So, Dr. Tinishwaran has taken this as his life goal, and he's doing all the research and try to break word by word what actually Thirukkural says. Thirukkural is a very ancient Tamil literature, whereby now the Tamilians are saying that is their actual Veda. All right, and they say they got nothing to do with northern kind of Bhagavad Gita and all these kind of studies. All right, so he's breaking one by one and trying to prove how Thirukkural is actually part of Bhagavad Gita. It's very innovative and very creative, and of course, to do this, he's taking a big risk, but he have done all this thorough research for the past, I think, 1 or 2 weeks. Then now he came out with a slide. Okay, so today is going to be a long session, all right, because I don't want him to rush. Okay, initially it was expected to be around 1 hour, 1 hour 15, but here we are talking about 2 hours. All right, so so he have prepared the slide in such a way, so he will be speaking. So end of the day, if you have any questions, you can ask, okay, when the session is over. And not only that, qualification of Dr. Tinishwaran, I forgot to inform that he just graduated as PhD in information technology. Okay, and he have been working with this hospital as an information technologist, and now he have given up and he's working as in a private firm. Okay, so without further ado, so I will pass to Dr. Tinishwaran Gunasegaran, and of course he is not as senior as some of you here, so please bless him that he could be able to present the class very nicely. All right, okay, so Dr. Tinishwaran, you can take over. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you, Prabhu. Actually, I'm able to do this solely because of the guidance and motivation of Patita Taran Prabhu, because since childhood, I've always hated teaching. And then even when I did my PhD, and then my supervisor asked me what you're going to do next, then I told him that I don't know, because I simply hate teaching. Then he said, then you shouldn't have done PhD at all. So I was that averse to teaching, but I've been conducting these classes for the past 1 month. Like there were 4 sessions in last month, and this is our session. So this became possible solely due to the well, I should say mercy of Patita Taran Prabhu, because of his guidance. So thank you, Prabhu. And so I'll start to share this slide. And if there are any questions, please feel free to interrupt, because when I share the slides, I may not be able to see the messages.
Yes. I forgot to inform that. So if you have any questions, please unmute and ask. I mean, because sending message, I think he's not able to see it. Hare Krishna.
So is my slide visible?
Yes.
Mm.
So you can start with the invocation, then you can start the program.
Okay. Om Ajnanatimandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namah Sri Chaitanya Mano Vishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Upagadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeyam Sri Guru Sri Utapatakamanam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagaljatam Sagana Raghunathan Vidam Stam Sajivam Tadvaitam Savadutam Paljana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Sri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpade Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namaste Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sudhe Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Hare Krishna. So the title for today's session is Bhagavad Gita and Thirukkural, and just to clarify, the purpose of this session is actually to show the many similarities between Gita and Thirukkural, and it is not actually meant to, propagate like which is better, which is who is greater, and all that. So this is meant to show the similarities and to actually prove how they complement each other. And as we shall see in the conclusion, it is beneficial, not even for non-devotees, also for devotees to also explore this beautiful piece of Tamil literature called Thirukkural. So I just want to start with this Purushartha concept. In Purusharthas, there are four concepts called Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. Normally, when you use the term Purushartha, people may not understand, but when we say Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, then people will be able to relate. So these are known as the elevating principles for us as human beings. So it actually works like this. In the ancient times, in the agrarian society, we know that for agriculture to be successful, we need rain. So for rain, people used to do yajna. Then that part is like the dharma part, the religious duty. And then once upon getting the harvest, people get wealth, and with the wealth called artha, people could engage in sense gratification or like family life and all that. So that part is about karma. So these three principles are actually, they are directly related to our material life. Only the fourth one is beyond the material life. It is like looking into spirituality. So in the purport by Srila Prabhupada in Gita, there is some explanation given regarding this Purushartha concept, which was mentioned in the Patanjali yoga system. By practice of yoga, one becomes gradually detached from material concepts. Though we know that there are many different types of yoga systems, like in Krishna consciousness, we have been taught that Bhakti yoga is the topmost yoga. So, but apart from that, there are many other systems also. But ultimately, the purpose of all these systems are meant to be detached from material life and to unite with God. But the problem starts when this definition of uniting with God itself is quite vague. Because according to different schools of thought, they all have different definitions. But as we shall see in this explanation, even in Patanjali yoga also, it is stated that uniting with God does not become like does not actually mean becoming one with God, where we lose our individual feature. So that explanation is given here by Prabhupada, because the Patanjali yoga system is actually the Dhyana yoga system, which is like involves intense meditation, and it is much more difficult than Bhakti yoga. But the benefit of Bhakti yoga is that it is very easy, and still we get the same benefit. So why not simply follow the easier path? So in Patanjali yoga, the Purushartha concept is mentioned, and also the Chit Shakti or internal potency is also mentioned, where we as living entities who are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, we have our actual individual identity, and that is a transcendental feature. But due to our desires, we fell into this material world, and now we are trapped in this material body where we are unable to unleash our actual individual identity. So as long as we are in this material world, we have to conduct our usual business involving material life. But at the same time, it is also very important that we consider about even for non-devotee, they should also look into spirituality, because the purpose of human life itself is for spiritual inquiry. We have got this human form of life after going through the 84 lakh material bodies, and this is a wonderful opportunity because animals and other living beings don't have this ability to engage in spiritual inquiry, because even animals also, they are involved in the business of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. So if we simply go about the material affairs without looking into spirituality at all, then there will be no difference between us and animals. So in Patanjali Yoga also, the term Kaivalyam is used, which may sound like oneness with the Supreme, but it doesn't mean that we lose our individual identity and merge into Brahmajyoti and all that. It's just that when we are in this material world, our true identity as servants of Krishna has been like it is hidden. So as mentioned by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Cheto Darpana Marjanam means that we have become like a mirror which is covered by dust. So we have to start cleaning the dust and move towards liberation, and that is what is meant by moksha. But even beyond moksha, that it is even beyond moksha is bhakti. So even by transcending the material concepts of dharma, artha, kama, we can move to moksha, but even that is not the be all and all, because that is just a starting point towards bhakti, which is the greater goal or the ultimate goal, where we can regain our position as the eternal servants of Krishna. So that is just some explanation regarding the Purushartha concept. So here also it is stated that we can only regain our transcendental identity, which alone can give us transcendental pleasure. So whatever pleasures we get from this material world, those are not, of course, we know that they are not permanent. Like in Gita 2.14, also it's stated that Matra Spasha Sukantaya, Sidoshna Sugadukara, Agama Paino Nitya, Stamtidikshasva Bharata. So this so-called happiness in our material life, it comes and goes. So that can now be our ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is to regain our constitutional position as the eternal servants of Krishna. Only then we can achieve the transcendental pleasure. But of course, that requires spiritual inquiry, and we have to transcend beyond the concepts of dharma, artha, kama, and consider moksha as the starting point. But ultimately, the ultimate goal is to attain bhakti or devotional service. So in order to achieve that, of all the different yoga systems, we have Bhakti Yoga, which is the best because it is meant for Kali Jivas like us, because we cannot focus in meditation for too long. So it is best to conduct devotional service, which is much easier than all the other complicated systems, but the benefit is much greater with simply by taking up a simpler practice. So from here we know where this Purushartha concept came from. in Gita 18.34 also it stated that that determination by which one holds fast to fruitive results in religion, economic development, and sense gratification is of the nature of passion, O Arjuna. Actually, this concept of material modes of nature, there is one chapter in the Gita, which is chapter 14, titled The Three Modes of Material Nature. But even in one of our previous sessions, we saw that the concept of material modes of nature is actually covered in almost all the chapters, starting from chapter 2 itself, rather indirectly, but only after chapter 14, it becomes more, Krishna starts to explain more about it directly. So as long as we are trapped in this material world, being subject to the material energy of Krishna, so we'll always be subject to these material modes of nature. And that's why even in chapter 18 also, there are various aspects in which Krishna talks about like a work in the three modes, the worker in the three modes, knowledge in three modes. And at a certain point, he also talks about the determination in three modes. So here, Krishna mentions that the determination, which is solely focused on the three Purusharthas, Dharma, Artha, Kama, is of the nature of passion. So in one of our previous sessions titled Goodness is Not Good Enough, we came to the conclusion, as stated in the scriptures, we saw that even achieving the mode of goodness is not good enough. So what's there to talk about the mode of passion? So that's why we need to transcend beyond the three Purusharthas like Dharma, Artha, Kama, and start spiritual inquiry towards moksha, so that we can attain bhakti. And even in Srimad Bhagavatam, it's also stated that out of the four principles, namely religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation, liberation has to be taken very seriously. The other three are subject to destruction by the stringent law of nature, death. So if we are too obsessed with only Dharma, Artha, Kama, and we keep repeating the cycle to just keep going with that business till the point of death, then again we'll have to take another material body and be trapped in this vicious cycle of Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi. So unless we consider the fourth Purushartha, there's no escape from this vicious cycle. So now regarding the four Purusharthas, they are also corresponding to, I mean, in Thirukkural, there are three divisions called Aram, Porul, Inbam, and these three actually correspond to the three concepts of Dharma, Artha, Kama. So it may seem like Thirukkural is only talking about a material life because there are only three divisions, but as we shall see later, Valluvar has touched upon the concept of spirituality, though not exclusively with a separate section or separate chapter. He has mentioned about spirituality and God in many Kurals. So regarding Thirukkural, it was composed by Valluvar. Actually, the focus of today's session is not to talk about the identity or origins of Valluvar, but we are only going to talk about what he has tried to convey and how it matches the teachings of Krishna in the Gita. So there are three main divisions called Aram, Porul, Inbam, corresponding to Dharma, Artha, Kama. There are 1,330 Kurals known as couplets, which are quite similar to sutras because they are very short compared to the shlokas in Gita. So there are 133 chapters called Adhikarams, and in each chapter there are 10 Kurals. So this is just an additional info. In the Constitution of Malaysia, we have this article related to freedom of religion called Article 11. Similarly, in the Constitution of India, there's this Article 25 related to freedom of religion, but there's also a clause there which states that the term Hindu in the Constitution of India is actually used as an umbrella term to include all the native religions which originated in India or Bharat. So that includes the religions of Sikhism, Jainism, Buddhism. So I just wanted to highlight this because there are many attempts to, show that people are trying to show that even the native religions of Bharat got nothing to do with Hinduism. The term Hinduism was just a label given by the British, but before that, since time immemorial, our Dharma has been known as Sanatan Dharma. And that concept, though that term is not used in the Constitution, but the concept is actually similar to what is explained here. So I just wanted to highlight that as an additional info. So to all devotees who are involved in the Krishna consciousness, so we know that about the 4 regulative principles. So I thought of just starting from that to show even how those are related to concepts mentioned in Thirukkural. I mean, here I'm not saying that it's not that Prabhupada copied these principles from Thirukkural or there's nothing like that. Our Dharma is Sanatan Dharma, and therefore all these concepts are there in our Dharma itself, which is our identity. So all these principles will be there in all the schools of thought which belong to Sanatana Dharma. Though like we belong to the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, which is part of the Vaishnavite school, but even in the Shaivite school, they all follow the same Dharma called Sanatana Dharma. So this is not to show who copied who. This is only to highlight the similarities of how all the diverse, even all the diverse thoughts are all interrelated and they are similar to each other. So we know that regarding the 4 regulative principles, no meat eating, no intoxication, no illicit sex, and no gambling. So actually these 4 principles, there are corresponding chapters related to these 4 principles. The first one, no meat eating. There's this chapter called Puran Martal. That is chapter 26, meaning abstinence from flesh. But in this chapter, almost all the Kurals mentioned by Valluvar, they actually look at this no meat eating thing from the viewpoint of mercy towards other living entities. But there's this bunch of people who call themselves that they care for ethical treatment towards animals, but they preach one thing and they do things which are completely opposite to their teachings, because for them, killing animals for eating is perfectly okay. They don't have any problems with that. Though they say that they are opposed to that, they don't really, make noise in places where it matters the most. Throughout the year, every year they have problem with the Hindu festivals only, and even though the festival may not have anything to do with animals at all, they'll put up nonsensical ads saying that be kind to animals during this festival, that festival, though that festival may not have anything to do with animals at all. But every year, when the time comes for them to be most active, they'll go missing. So to all devotees who are animal lovers, I just want to request that please don't waste your money by donating to these fraudsters. Rather, you can donate for Gau Seva. So in Kural chapter 26, most of the Kurals stated by Valluvar regarding no meat eating, they are actually related to the perspective of mercy towards animal. But of course, many so-called intellectuals will then start to question Then what about eating vegetables? Don't vegetables have life? Are you not killing them? So that's why if we look at Krishna consciousness and even the teachings of Gita, we will understand how Krishna has said that it is not possible to be completely free from sinful reactions, even by eating vegetables. And therefore, that's why in Krishna consciousness, we focus on eating prasadam and not merely vegetarian food. In Gita 3.13, it stated, the devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sins because they eat food which is offered first for sacrifice. Others who prepare food for personal sense enjoyment verily eat only sin. So devotees who are always in love with the Lord are called Shantas. Or in Hindi, the term sounds like a sant or saint. So such exalted devotees, they'll never accept any food which is not offered to Krishna. So that's why in Krishna consciousness, we don't merely eat vegetarian food, which is devoid of onion and garlic. We eat prasadam, which is offered to Krishna. And that is where the second aspect of being freed from sinful reactions comes, because even by eating vegetables, there are some sinful reactions, and that's why it is important to offer food to Krishna and take it as prasadam. It is clearly explained in many of the verses and purports of Gita, but of course the so-called intellectuals, they only read about Gita from WhatsApp University. So that's why that's their understanding. So for a devotee who merely prepares food for sense gratification, who merely prepares food for his own enjoyment, regardless of whether he's a devotee or non-devotee, they only end up eating sin. As it's stated here, such people are not only thieves, but also eaters of all kinds of sins. How can such people be happy? It's not possible. Then we know that in Gita 9.26, Krishna says, Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam Yome Bhaktya Prayasati Tadam Bhakti Upartam Ashnami Prayatatmana. So in this verse, Krishna says that if one offers me with love and devotion, a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water, I will accept it. So here, Krishna is not merely talking about the kind of offering, but he also says that it should be offered with love and devotion. So if there is love and devotion, even if the offering is small, he is willing to accept. So here in the purport, Prabhupada has clearly explained about what kind of offerings can be made for Krishna. And to become a true devotee, we should only have this mindset of eating only what Krishna eats. Anything which Krishna does not eat, we should not even touch it. That should be the mindset. And by having that mindset, even the food which we eat will be freed from sinful reactions. So even in this purport also, Prabhupada refers to the previous verse 3.13 of how we can be freed from sins by eating prasadam. So it is not merely about eating vegetarian food without onion and garlic. So that is the difference between prasadam and mere vegetarian food. And then in the next verse also, Krishna says, Yat karosi, yat asnasi, yat yoshi dadasyat, yat tapasesi kaunteya, tat kurusam adarpanam. Here also Krishna re-emphasizes the importance of offering the food to him so that we can be freed from the sinful reactions. So these explanations are more than enough to answer those so-called intellectuals who ask, what about eating vegetables? Are you not killing them? So the explanation for their questions can be found in our scriptures. But of course, to such intellectuals, they'll be quick to dismiss our scriptures as mythology, and yet they call themselves intellectuals, of course, self-proclaimed intellectuals. Then even in chapter 17, which is titled Divisions of Faith, there's this, in chapter 17, it covers about 5 aspects: Yajna, Dana, Tapa, Ahara, Shraddha. So in the part which covers about food, Krishna talks about the 3 types of food, and even the food which is prepared in the mode of goodness, like vegetarian food, that also is not good enough. That's why we say that goodness is not good enough. So even vegetarian food, which is healthy and which is just nice for our consumption, still have to be offered to remove all the sinful reactions. So even food in the mode of goodness will have to become Shuddha Sattva. The so-called Sattvic food also have to be only becomes Shuddha Sattva when it's offered to Krishna and becomes Prasadam. So there are rules of the types of food which can be offered to Krishna, and clearly the non-veg types and many other forbidden types like garlic and onion are not allowed to be offered. So we should only focus on what is ideal for Krishna's consumption, and we should only accept the remnants of what he has taken. Then our food, from merely being food in goodness, becomes Shuddha Sattva or transcendental food. So Prabhupada also mentions in the purport that the best food is the remnants of what is offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So all these explanations are more than enough to answer those intellectuals who ask, what about eating vegetables? I'm not killing them. So in from here also we can clearly see that in chapter 26 of Thirukkural, Valluvar has mentioned about mercy towards other living entities. So he mentions about, he talks about no meat eating from that perspective of not killing animals. But when these so-called intellectuals ask, then what about vegetables? Are you not killing them? Then we have the explanation from Gita. So we can clearly see how both complement each other. So this is more explanation regarding the preparation of prasadam in chapter 17. So next is the second regulative principle is regarding no intoxication. There's also another chapter in Thirukkural, that is chapter 93, titled Kallunnamai, which translates to not drinking palm wine. There are many so-called Tamil nationalists and even these people from DMK who are self-appointed guardians of Tamil language, tradition and culture. These are all happening under their watch. It all started from the blessings of the greatest chief minister in the history of Tamil Nadu, M. Karunanidhi. It all started when he lifted liquor prohibition. Initially, there was liquor prohibition in the entire state of Tamil Nadu. And then this great chief minister, he lifted liquor prohibition. So Tamil Nadu, which was treading the path shown by Valluvar, actually had come to this point today. But of course, we are told to believe that Karunanidhi was a great scholar in Tamil. But maybe he would have thought that, okay, Valluvar has only mentioned about Kallunnamai, don't drink kallu or palm wine. So maybe that genius would have thought that it's okay to sell other varieties. So it has come to this point. This is happening in the land of Valluvar today. And yet these people say that they are staunch followers of Thiruvallur, and Thirukkural is the best scripture. We don't need other scriptures. And in the chapter regarding Kallunnamai, in one of the Kurals, Valluvar says that those who purchase unconsciousness by purchasing liquor, they are the most ignorant people. Similarly, there's a verse in Gita 5.22 where Krishna says, Ye samsparja bhoga dukkha yoni evate adi antavanta kaunteya nateshu ramate buddha. An intelligent person does not take part in the sources of misery which are due to contact with the material senses. O son of Kunti, such pleasures have a beginning and an end, and so the wise man does not delight in them. We know that intoxication only gives, not we, we have seen other people like how they claim to have certain pleasure, or they give all sorts of justification to, justify their consumption of liquor. But they think that through consumption of liquor, they may think that they are solving all their problems or getting pleasure away from their problems, but nothing of that sort happens. They are only getting some so-called pleasure for a very limited time, and then everything else remains the same after that. So such is the ignorance of those people who consume liquor. Then next, regarding the third regulative principle is no gambling. Again, in Thirukkural, there's chapter 94 titled Sudu, but Valluvar does not talk about the glories of Sudu. He actually mentions all the Kurals which prohibit gambling, or actually he talks about why gambling should be avoided. But again, I said that Karunanidhi is the greatest chief minister in the history of Tamil Nadu for a reason, because even if we take this topic also, there was this guy called lottery scam king Martin, who was involved in this lottery scam in the 90s, and that also happened under the watch of this great chief minister Karunanidhi, with his blessings. Many families were destroyed, but of course that is a thing of the past now, because once Jayalalitha took over, she banned this lottery thing. But even today, there are a lot of people who are involved in this online gambling. So this is also happening in the land of Valluvar. They say that they are staunch followers of Valluvar and Thirukkural. And in Gita 10.36, there's this verse where Krishna says that I'm also the gambling of cheats, meaning that Krishna himself also mentions that gambling is the highest form of cheating, but he himself is greater than all cheats, meaning that, for example, we know the story where the Pandavas were deceived by Shakuni in the when they were gambling. But if we observe carefully, Yudhishthira was supposed to play against Duryodhana, but Duryodhana was not directly involved in the game. It was Shakuni who was playing on behalf of Duryodhana. So similarly, if Krishna was there on that day, he would have trashed Shakuni even in that game. But still, here there are two ways of looking at it. One, even Krishna is able to cheat even the greatest of cheaters. So of course, because he is the supreme controller, so no one can claim to be superior to him. And in another context, Krishna also highlights how gambling is the highest form of cheating. And still, many people in not just in Tamil Nadu, even all over the world, even today they're involved in online gambling. And even here we have this 4D thing. So a lot of people who claim to be proud Tamilians, who claim to be staunch followers of Valluvar, they are not bothered about following the real teachings of Valluvar, neither the teaching of Thirukkural or Gita. So these people who claim to be proud Tamilians, they neither know what is there in the Gita or the Thirukkural. I cannot really cover much about the regulative principles, the fourth regulative principle, because that is in most of the chapters in the section called Inbum. It talks about the ideal married life. So
Someone speaking, kindly mute yourself.
Regarding the fourth regulative principle, Valluvar has glorified the ideals of married life. So even that is also covered in Kural. So we have just seen how even the four regulative principles are related to what is there in the Kural. I mean Thirukkural. So now we'll look at verse by verse similarities of what has been mentioned in Thirukkural and Gita. So we'll start with the first Kural. So the first Kural translates to as the letter A is the first of all letters. So the eternal God is first in the world. So here the word Adi Bhagavan becomes the most disputed topic in this Kural. But as we can clearly see, Valluvar has started his work with the chapter on Kadol Valti, and he also pays tributes to the Supreme Being. So yet the so-called rationalist atheist DMK, they try to manipulate whatever Valluvar has mentioned. So in Gita 10.33, there's this verse where Krishna says in chapter 10, Krishna talks about his opulences, like of all the archers, I'm Rama, of Pandavas, I'm Arjuna. He talks about his opulences by giving examples. And he also says of letters, I'm the letter A. So we can clearly see how it's directly related or similar to what has been mentioned in the first Kural. And even if you look at the second part of the first Kural, even that part also is similar to Gita 10.8, Am Sarvasya Prabho, where Krishna says, I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. So what Valluvar has mentioned in this Kural also is clearly similar to what has been said. But of course, the so-called rationalists and atheists, they cannot accept the fact. So they start to paint Valluvar with different identities. And also they are trying their best to distort what he has stated in such a simple and straightforward way. So the so-called rationalists and atheists, they always come up with this nonsensical argument where they say that there's no God, everything emanates from nature. So please look at this picture carefully, because we'll be dealing with a lot of shlokas which is related to this picture. Here we can clearly see how the three modes of material nature are acting as puppeteers who control the living entities. So this is where it all starts, this everything emanates from nature kind of argument. So we'll look at it further in detail. The 5 core topics in the Gita are Ishvara, Jiva, Prakriti, Kala, Karma. So Ishvara refers to the supreme controller, Krishna. Jiva refers to the living entities, not just human beings, but all living entities. Then Prakriti refers to material nature. Kala and Karma refer to time and actions, the actions performed by living entities throughout the time in which we are in this material nature. So as we saw in 10.8, Krishna says that I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. So we are now trapped in this material world, but Krishna is there in his transcendental abode in the spiritual world. So even the both the spiritual and material worlds belong to him. So even the material energy which drives this material world emanates from him. And the three modes of material nature, namely goodness, passion, and ignorance, these are like byproducts of Krishna's material energy, and they act as puppeteers who control the living entities. So here, even when the living entities try to look around and see what's going on, they can only see the material nature in action. That's how they come up with this everything emanates from nature kind of so-called rational argument. And as we shall see later, Krishna explains why this delusion happens. In 7.4, Krishna mentions about, starting from 7.4 onwards, Krishna mentions in a series of verses, he explains about his material energy. So in 7.4, he talks about the 8 parts of his material energy. Then he also says that apart from material energy, there's another superior energy. Superior means that here the living entities are the marginal energy, which are actually superior to the material energy. But still, we are like trapped in between the two energies, like we are trapped between the spiritual and material energy of Krishna. That is the position of the conditioned souls. Then in 7.6, Krishna says that regardless of the distinction of these different types of energies, all these energies emanate from him. So in 7.7, he says, there is no truth superior to me. So meaning that even beyond the three modes of material nature, we saw that Krishna is beyond them. He's above the modes. So he emphasizes that in 7.12, know that all states of being, be they of goodness, passion, or ignorance, are manifested by my energy. I am in one sense everything, but I am independent. I am not under the modes of material nature, for they, on the contrary, are within me. So the modes of material nature are actually subject to, they are subjects, they are subservient to Krishna. But we ourselves are subject to the modes of material nature. So that is our real position. Again, in chapter 9 also, Krishna clearly says, this material nature, which is one of my energies, is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, producing all moving and non-moving beings. Under its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. So the entire material nature moves and runs according to the instructions of Krishna. And still, we ourselves are under the material nature and we are deluded. I mean, not we, but the so-called rationalists, atheists, they are deluded, and that's why they always come up with this everything emanates from nature kind of argument. Here, Krishna clearly says in 7.13, deluded by the three modes, goodness, passion, and ignorance, the whole world does not know me, who am above the modes and inexhaustible. So that is the position of the so-called rationalists or atheists. They say that everything emanates from nature because they are simply deluded by the material modes of nature to the point where they are unable to acknowledge Krishna. So that itself is emphasized by Krishna. So when these so-called atheists or rationalists say that no, we don't believe in God, everything came from nature, so they are actually proving Krishna's point, what he has mentioned in 7.13. Then in 7.14, Krishna says that even the Maya Shakti, which is material, the material energy of Krishna, is extremely powerful and difficult to overcome by conditioned souls like us. But those who have surrendered unto Krishna can easily cross beyond it. So similar to 7.14, in many other verses like 9.32 and even in 18.66, Krishna keeps on, he keeps reiterating the importance of surrendering to him to cross over this ocean of material existence. However, he also recognizes that there are two types of people in 7.15 and 16 who will never surrender to him, and also those who surrender to him. In 7.15, Krishna mentions about the types of people who don't surrender to him. And in 7.16, he mentions about people who surrender to him. So people who are inquisitive and who are searching for knowledge, who are truly searching for knowledge, they will surrender to Krishna. But those who call themselves to be knowledgeable and those who think that they are knowledgeable, but they only make up things based on their mental concoctions, they never surrender to Krishna. So we saw one such personality in one of our previous sessions titled Maya Partanyana, or Knowledge Stolen by Illusion. The recording of that video is in our channel. So we saw one such personality who was supposed to be a great scholar, but he always ended up making nonsensical statements based on his mental concoctions. So I've counted that person also. That was in one of our previous sessions. So even if we give all these explanations from an authorized scripture like Gita, even at some point, those people who are of this 7.15 kind of people, they'll still say, no, Krishna was just a normal human being, or maybe he wouldn't have existed at all. So they keep saying things like that. So Krishna also acknowledges those type of people in 9.11. So we saw that how Vallur mentions about the concept of Bhagavan, and still that simple and straightforward statement gets distorted by the so-called rationalists and atheists who try to relate everything to nature. And we also saw why such things happen based on Krishna's explanation. So we can, up to this point, we can conclude how Vallur supports the notion of supreme Godhead Krishna. Normally in most of Prabhupada's purports, we see this expression of a supreme personality of Godhead Krishna. So up to this point, we saw how Vallur supports the notion of supreme Godhead Krishna. So next we'll see how, later we'll see how the Kurals in Thirukkural are also, they confirm the notion of personality of Godhead later after this. But okay, now regarding the term Bhagavan, the term Bhagavan is used in the Gita for the first time in 2.2, starting with Sri Bhagavan Vacha, where Krishna starts to talk for the first time. So the term Bhagavan itself is very significant, and Srila Prabhupada has given very elaborate explanation in his purport for Gita 2.2, where in the first part of the purport, Prabhupada talks about Bhagavan in the context of realization of absolute truth. So as we know, the absolute truth can be realized in three features, but the topmost and complete feature is the Bhagavan feature. Then in the second half of the purport, Prabhupada explains the term Bhagavan based on the context of owner of all opulences. As mentioned by Parashara Muni, Bhagavan is the one who has the 6 opulences of wealth, strength, beauty, fame, knowledge, and renunciation. So that's why Krishna is called Bhagavan, who is the supreme Godhead. Even in Brahma Samhita, Brahma also says Ishvara Parama Krishna. Then in Bhagavatam, we have this verse in 1.3.28. Chapter 3 in the first canto talks about all the 22 different incarnations of Krishna. Normally, people know the 10 incarnations, but there are 22 in total. So up to verse 27, it talks about all the different incarnations. And in verse 28, it is stated, Iti cham sakala pumsa Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. all the above mentioned incarnations, meaning all the incarnations which are mentioned from verse 1 to 27 in chapter 3 of the first canto, are either plenary portions or portions of the plenary portions of the Lord, but Lord Sri Krishna is the original personality of Godhead. All of them appear on planets where whenever there is a disturbance created by the atheist, the Lord incarnates to protect the theist. So again, we saw the explanation regarding the concept of Bhagavan. Now, regarding the word Bhagavan itself, in the first Kural, Vallur says Bhagavan. But normally, when we talk about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it refers to Bhagavan. But in Sanskrit, they are actually they are just different forms of the same word. Bhagavan is actually in Pratama Ekavachana, and Bhagavan is in Sambodhana Ekavachana. And so we saw how Vallur has mentioned about the Supreme God, Godhead Krishna, because here's another word from the Kural in 1103. Tam Vilvar main role, Tuilin Nindugol, Tamarai Kannan Ulagu. Here the word Tamarai Kannan Ulagu refers to the lotus-eyed Vishnu's supreme abode. Meaning this is just here what we are seeing is just a rough translation. It's stated here lotus-eyed Vishnu's heaven, but it actually refers to the supreme abode, the Vaikuntha planets or Goloka Vrindavana. So here Vallur is actually comparing the sweetness of conjugal bliss he's comparing it to the sweetness of the supreme abode. So from here, when talking about the supreme abode, he is specifically referring to Tamarai Kannan Ulagi. So he's talking about the supreme abode of the lotus-eyed one. So from here, we can clearly see, up to this point, we can clearly see how even Vallur supports the notion of supreme Godhead Krishna. Now we'll see how he also supports the notion of supreme personality of Godhead Krishna. In Gita 12.1, Arjuna asked Krishna, which are considered to be more perfect, those who are always properly engaged in your devotional service, or those who worship the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested. So here Arjuna's question is like comparing the worship of the personal form of Krishna against the impersonal form. To which Krishna replies, those who fix their minds on my personal form and are always engaged in worshipping me with great and transcendental faith are considered by me to be most perfect. So through his reply, Krishna himself endorses the worship of his personal form. Then in 12.5 also, Krishna explains that for those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested, impersonal feature of the Supreme, advancement is very troublesome. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied. So we as conditioned souls who are embodied, it is very difficult for us to worship the impersonal feature, and therefore Krishna himself recommends worshipping the personal feature of him. So now we will see how the Kurals mentioned in Thirukkural chapter 1, how they also support the notion of personality of Godhead. So here, please note the words which have been underlined. In Kural 2, it translates to what profit have those derived from learning who worship not the good feet of him who is possessed of pure knowledge. Please note the word good feet of him, the underlined words. Then in Kural 3, again note the underlined words. They who are united to the glorious feet of him who passes swiftly over the flower of the mind shall flourish long above all worlds. Then in Kural 4, to those who meditate the feet of him who is void of desire or aversion, evil shall never come. In Kural 7, anxiety of mind cannot be removed except from those who are united to the feet of him who is incomparable. Kural 8, none can swim the sea of vice, but those who are united to the feet of that gracious being who is a sea of virtue. Kural 9, the head that worships not the feet of him who is possessed of 8 attributes is as useless as a sense without the power of sensation. Kural 10, the last Kural of the first chapter. None can swim the great sea of birds, but those who are united to the feet of God. So, the first chapter of Thirukkural, in all the chapters, they are composed of 10 Kurals each. So, in the first chapter itself, we saw that 7 out of 10 Kurals, Vallur clearly mentions the feet of God. So, from there, we can clearly see how Vallur also endorses the notion of personality of Godhead. So, that is how even the Kurals confirm to the notion of supreme personality of Godhead, Krishna. So, I think it has been 1 hour already. Before going to the second half, shall we take a 5-minute break? Hello?
Sure, Prabhu. Can, Prabhu.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, yes.
So we'll resume after 5 minutes.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so just a quick recap. We have actually covered more than half of our slides. So up to this point, we saw how some of the topics in Thirukkural, they We lost you, Prabhu. Frozen. Dinesh, we can't hear you. Just a moment, he will join back. Okay, you can proceed.
Okay. So we have from the first half, we have seen how the Kurals mentioned in Thirukkural, especially from the first Kural and even in the chapter 1, how they all confirm the notion of supreme personality of Godhead Krishna. But of course, a lot of people are extremely desperate to paint Vallur as a person belonging to some other community, or even to paint him as an atheist. But it's only amusing because all the proofs are so obvious, and yet these people are so desperate. So it's just amusing, but still there is a necessity to counter those people from time to time. So apart from what we have seen so far, there are also other Kurals which talk about things which are similar to what has been mentioned by Krishna in the Gita, like crossing the ocean of misery, which is full of this vicious cycle of repeated birth and death. So in Gita 4.36, Krishna says, even if you are considered to be the most sinful of all sinners, when you are situated in the boat of transcendental knowledge, you will be able to cross over the ocean of miseries. In Kural 10, Valluvar says, Piravi Perungadal நீந்துவார் நீந்தார் இறைவன் அடி சேராதார். None can swim the great sea of births, but those who are united to the feet of God. So here also Valluvar mentions the importance of surrendering to God to overcome this ocean of misery. So even the words Piravi Perungadal is very significant here because it is clearly related to rebirths, meaning the repeated cycles of birth, death, old age, and disease. Then in Gita chapter 12 also, in verse 6 and 7, Krishna says, but those who worship me, giving up all their activities unto me, and being devoted to me without deviation, engaged in devotional service, and always meditating upon me, having fixed their minds upon me, O son of Pritha, for them I am the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death. So here's another verse from the Gita, which also talks about, which is similar to Piravi Perungadal. That's another similarity. And then in Gita chapter 3, 3.14, it stated, all living bodies subsist on food grains, which are produced from rains. Rains are produced by performance of yajna, and yajna is born of prescribed duties. So in Thirukkural chapter 1, the Kural 1 to 10 are related to Kadavul Valthi. And then the second chapter talks about the glories of rain. So in Kural 11, it is stated, by the continuance of rain, the world is preserved in existence. It is therefore worthy to be called ambrosia or nectar. So here also we can clearly see the similarities between what was stated in the Gita and the Kural. Then even if we look at Kural number 12, rain produces good food and is itself food, also related to verse 3.14 from the Gita. Then in the Gita chapter 16, 16.21, the very famous verse, Trividam Nargashedam Dwaram Nashnamatna Kama Krodha Tata Lopa Tasma Teda Trayam Chari. There are three gates leading to this hell, lust, anger, and greed. Every sane man should give these up, for they lead to the degradation of the soul. In Kural number 35, it is also stated that conduct is virtue which is free from these four things: malice, desire, anger, and bitter speech, also similar to lust, anger, and greed. Then in Gita 2.50, Krishna says, a man engaged in devotional service rids himself of both good and bad reactions, even in this life. Therefore, strive for yoga, which is the art of all work. This is the point where Krishna tries to convince Arjuna so that he does his duty without any expectations, so that he's always free from the reactions of work. So if we talk about the reactions of work, there can be positive reaction and also negative reaction. But it is best to transcend those by being unattached from the fruits of work, so that we neither suffer the positives or negatives, because even the positive actions, positive effects are binding. Like we have also seen in chapter 9 regarding in 9.21, where Krishna says that even those who go to heaven by performing the fruitive activities, they can stay there for a certain period of time to enjoy the piety of all their fruitive works. But even once the piety expires, they have to return to this material world. So even positive reactions are binding. In Kural 5, it is stated, the twofold deeds that spring from darkness shall not adhere to those who delight in the true praise of God. So here the twofold deeds actually refer to Iruvinai. Iruvinai meaning positive and negative reactions. Again, similar to what was stated in Gita 2.50. Then another interesting verse from Gita, and which is also very similar to what was mentioned in Kural 1 to 6. in 2.58, it stated, one who is able to withdraw his senses from sense objects as the tortoise draws its limbs within the shell is firmly fixed in perfect consciousness. In Kural 126, it stated, should one throughout a single birth like a tortoise, please note the exact same word being used here, like a tortoise keep in his five senses, the fruit of it will prove a safeguard to him throughout the sevenfold births. So even Krishna gave the analogy of tortoise regarding how we should withdraw our senses from the attraction of sense objects. And even Vallur uses the exact same analogy. Then in 9.29, Krishna says, I envy no one, nor am I partial to anyone. I am equal to all, but whoever renders service unto me in devotion is a friend, is in me, and I am also a friend to him. So if we can recall from the first half of our session, we saw in Gita 7.15 and 7.16, Krishna talks about the two categories of people who, in 7.15, he mentions about the categories of people who do not surrender unto him. Then in 7.16, he talks about people who surrender unto him. So the so-called intellectuals, they might say, oh, see, why Krishna is splitting people into two categories? Why is he discriminating? Why he cannot be equal to all? So to enlighten those so-called intellectuals, Krishna spoke this verse in 9.29, saying that he is equal to all, but whoever renders service unto him is a closer friend. Those who are always engrossed in the material affairs of the material world, who are engrossed in sense gratification, Krishna does not disturb them because he does not interrupt in the individual freedom of living entities. That's why he created 84 lakh apartments for all the conditioned souls to reside in, according to their preference. So in Kural 4 also, it is stated, to those who meditate the feet of him, who is void of desire or aversion. Meaning, again, Krishna is equal to all, void of desire or aversion. So those who meditate the feet of him, evil shall never come. So again, Vallur uses the same description of how Krishna said that he is equal to all. Again, Vallur also explains, saying that God, Krishna, neither has desire or aversion towards anyone. Then in Gita 10.30, in the chapter 10, where Krishna talks about his opulences, so in this verse, he says, among subduers, I am time. So even in Kural 334, it is also stated, time is like a saw which cuts down life. So Krishna refers to time as a subduer, which is also very similar to what Vallur says, that time is a saw which cuts down life. Then in Gita 10.34, Krishna says quite similar things which have been spoken about time, like I am all devouring death. So as time goes on, we are all nearing death. And even in 11.32, Krishna says, time I am the great destroyer of the worlds. So all these are similar to what Vallur has said regarding time being like a saw which cuts down life. So even in the Gita also, Krishna has described himself as the personification of time, because even the so-called atheists who say that they don't believe in God, they can never deny the existence of time. We are all, since birth, we are all aging and we are all moving towards death. That no one can deny. So Krishna has also clearly stated that he is the personification of time, which destroys everything. Then in Gita 15.15, Krishna says, Sarvasya chaham hriti sannivista mattas smriti jnana apohanam cha vedescha sarvai amem vedya vedanta kritveda videva chaham. I'm seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas, I'm to be known. Indeed, I'm the compiler of Vedanta, and I'm the knower of the Vedas. So here, the word Veda is very significant because we must understand that the word Veda itself refers to knowledge. So whenever we say Vedic knowledge, that is a very redundant expression because the term Veda itself is knowledge. And prior to the introduction of this so-called modern education, in ancient times, in all the Gurukuls, the Vedas were taught as one single book of knowledge before Vyasadeva divided them into different divisions. So Veda itself refers to knowledge. So even that verse is related to the second Kural, where Valluvar says, what profit have those derived from learning who worship not the good feet of him who is possessed of pure knowledge? Krishna says, by all the Vedas, I am to be known. So we can only call ourselves to be educated if we know him. And that's exactly what Valluvar says. What profit have those derived from learning who worship not the good feet of him who is possessed of pure knowledge? There's no point in calling ourselves to be knowledgeable or educated if we don't worship God. That's what both Krishna and Valluvar also says. And in 4.13, now actually we are approaching the end of our session, but this is kind of the most interesting part, because as I said, there's always this comparison going on. A lot of people who claim to be staunch followers of Valluvar, who say that they regard that Thirukkural is the best book. There's no need for any other book. So they all say that they love Thirukkural more than their life itself, but they don't follow anything which is stated in the Kural. Like we saw how liquor prohibition was lifted and how much revenue the government is earning from liquor sales. So that's the extent of how these staunch followers of Valluvar are following his teachings. So we saw that. And normally the so-called opponents of Gita, who say that Gita, they tend to even say that Gita is nothing compared to the Thirukkural. For that, the only argument which they have is that Gita talks about Varnashram Dharma, which discriminates based on birth. So these people, they always think that simply by repeating a lie for 1,000 times, it becomes truth. So it's I don't know whether we should really sympathize with them or what, because it is clearly stated in Gita 4.13, Chaturvarnyam Maya Srishtam Guna Karma Vivagasa Tasya Kartaram Apimam Vidya Kartaram Avyayam. According to the three modes of material nature and the work associated with them, the four divisions of human society are created by me. And although I am the creator of this system, you should know that I am yet the non-doer, being unchangeable. So the only so-called weapon which they have to attack Sanatana Dharma is that they keep repeating the lie that Varna discriminates based on birth, when it's clearly stated in the Gita itself, Guna Karma Vibhagasaha. It is clearly stated that the Varnas are distinguished based on the qualities, the modes of material nature, and the work associated with them. And the exact same thing has also been mentioned by Valluvar in Kural 972. All human beings agree as regards their birth, but differ as regards their characteristics because of the different qualities of their actions. Seydolil Vetrumayan. The difference is only because of the occupation. So there's no proof from authorized scriptures which say that people should be discriminated by birth. Of course, we are all born to different families, to different communities, but that's not a ground for discrimination. And Krishna himself clearly states that the varnas are purely based on gunas and karmas. So here in the purport for 4.13, Prabhupada has clearly explained regarding how the different modes are related to the different varnas. Here we can clearly see that the intelligent class of men called brahmanas are associated with the mode of goodness. Now, what we have to understand from this purport is that in one of our previous sessions, we talked about this topic titled "Goodness is not good enough." Even in the entire Gita also, Krishna talks about the modes of material nature in many parts. But the main conclusion is that in order to attain the supreme abode, we have to transcend the modes. Even the mode of goodness is not good enough. We also have to transcend the mode. So just because someone was born in a Brahmana family or because he has become a Brahmana, that does not ensure the supreme destination. Still, even that person has to transcend the mode of goodness. So it's stated here, a person in Krishna consciousness is above even the Brahmanas. That is the essence of being a Vaishnava. A Vaishnava is above the four Varnas. So that should be the main goal of our life, not to be obsessed about only these four Varnas and fight about why this Varna is regarded as superior to that and all that. We all have our own tendencies and we can always engage in our occupation, but being in Krishna consciousness, we perform our duties, and at the same time being Krishna conscious, we can achieve transcendence to go back to Godhead. So in chapter 18, there's more elaborate explanation regarding the Varna system. In 18.40, Krishna says, there's no being existing either here or among the demigods in the higher planetary systems, which is freed from these three modes born of material nature. So for all living entities who are trapped in this material world, which consists of the 14 planetary systems, even the topmost living entity, Brahma, who is there in Satyaloka, even he is not free from the influence of the modes of material nature. So in the next verse, Krishna talks about the four Varnas. Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras are distinguished by the qualities born of their own natures in accordance with the material modes. In 18.42, the qualities of a Brahmana are mentioned: peacefulness, self-control, austerity, purity, tolerance, honesty, knowledge, wisdom, and religiousness. These are the natural qualities by which the Brahmanas work. So from here, we can clearly see that only someone who has all these qualities can call himself a Brahmana, not simply someone who was born in a Brahmana family should not call himself a Brahmana, based on the definition given by Krishna in Gita. Then in 18.43, the qualities of the Kshatriyas are given. Then in 18.44, the qualities of Vaishyas and Shudras are given. So here it's stated Krishi Gau Raksha, meaning farming, cow protection, are the business of Vaishyas. So here Krishna specifically uses the word Gau Raksha. So just another additional information here. In the Constitution of India, Article 48, it also talks about cow protection. So that's just another additional information. Cow protection is something is very dear to Krishna's heart. Then actually, when we talk about the Varna system, the so-called opponents of Sanatana Dharma, the only accusation which they have is that Varnashram Dharma divides people based on birth. So we saw that there's no such thing. We clearly saw how the gunas and karmas distinguish the different Varnas. Then the next accusation which they put forward is that Varnashram Dharma forces people to be stuck in their Varna. It does not allow people to change their Varna. So we'll also see the explanation regarding that from now onwards. In 18.45, Krishna says, by following his qualities of work, every man can become perfect. Now please hear from me how this can be done. 18.46, by worship of the Lord, who is the source of all beings and who is all pervading, a man can attain perfection through performing his own work. 18.47, it is better to engage in one's own occupation, even though one may perform it imperfectly, than to accept another's occupation and perform it perfectly. Duties prescribed according to one's nature are never affected by sinful reactions. Here, Krishna says that it is better to stick to our own varna and do it. We should strive to do it perfectly. Even if there may be imperfections, it is better to stick to our varna so that we can always strive to deliver the best for the society. It is as simple as that. But the so-called opponents of Sanatana Dharma, they say that Krishna is forcing people to remain stuck in one varna. Regardless of whether they follow Krishna's instruction or not, we all know that we cannot handle 10 jobs at one time. Even when we get one job, we are all struggling to give our best. So that's why Krishna himself has clearly stated that regardless of whatever varna you are in, you just focus on giving your best. It's as simple as that. But they just need some excuse to show their opposition, their senseless opposition. Then in actually in 3.35 also, the same thing was mentioned by Krishna. He has mentioned in 3.35 regarding the importance of being focused in our varna. And then in 18.47 also, he mentions the same thing. So if we look at the purport for 3.35, here Prabhupada has clearly explained why it's important to be focused in our varna, and why it is not possible for us to simply keep changing varnas. So here Prabhupada says one should discharge his prescribed duties in full Krishna consciousness rather than those prescribed for others. Materially prescribed duties are duties enjoined according to one's psychophysical condition under the spell of the modes of material nature. Spiritual duties are as ordered by the spiritual master for the transcendental service of Krishna. But whether material or spiritual, one should stick to his prescribed duties, even up to death, rather than imitate another's prescribed duties. Following the authorized direction is always good for the performer. When one is under the spell of the modes of material nature, one should follow the prescribed rules for his particular situation and should not imitate others. So we being born in this material world, since we are trapped here, first our focus should be to escape from this material life which is binding. Then, but even to do that, we should still focus on our daily affairs, but in full Krishna consciousness. That is the only difference. Then Prabhupada also mentions, however, when one transcends the modes of material nature and is fully situated in Krishna consciousness, he can perform anything and everything under the direction of a bona fide spiritual master. So even changing one's varna cannot be done whimsically. It is best to follow the direction of a bona fide spiritual master. However, I cannot really say my personal opinion, but we all know that we cannot even do our own job properly. We are always struggling. So why should we be bothered about trying to be this jack of all trades? In the transcendental stage, the distinctions of the material world do not apply. For example, Vishwamitra was originally a Kshatriya, but later on he acted as a Brahmana. Whereas Parashurama was a Brahmana, but later on he acted as a Kshatriya. So changing of varnas is okay for those who have achieved transcendence. But we being Kali Jivas, our lifetime is so limited that we are not even able to achieve transcendence. So why should we bother about changing varnas? So this opposition by the so-called intellectuals who say that Krishna does not allow one to change his varna, that is also a very nonsensical argument for which the explanation is given here. Next, the other weapon which they use is regarding the Purusha Sukta, which is also found in Srimad Bhagavatam 2.5.37. Purushasya mukam brahma shatra metasya bhava urvor vaishya bhagavata padbyam shudro yajayata. The Brahmanas represent his mouth, the Kshatriyas his arms, the Vaishyas his thighs, and the Shudras are born of his legs. So the so-called intellectuals always use this as another excuse to attack the Varnashrama system, saying that why the Shudras are born of his legs, why Shudras are given such a position. But the Purusha Sutta is actually a personification of the body of the Supreme Lord, and the different Varnas come from his different body parts. It is clearly stated in the purport that all are different parts of the body of the Lord, and no one is different from the Lord. All are components of the same body. So the different limbs of the body are meant to serve the complete whole. All the different parts serve the same body in different ways. It's as simple as that. And it cannot be said that just because Shudras emanate from the feet of the Lord, therefore they are meant to be, they should be regarded as filthy. There's no such thing. If that is the case, then why we even saw earlier that in the first chapter of Thirukkural, we saw that so many Kurals, 7 out of 10 Kurals, Vallur himself mentions about the feet of the Lord. And we, in Krishna consciousness also, we are always told to chant and meditate on the feet of the Lord. If Shudras are supposed to be regarded as filthy simply because they emanate from the feet of the Lord, then why are we told to meditate on the feet of the Lord? So it's not like that. It's just that different parts of the body serve the Supreme Being. It's just that, as simple as that. And another example, we know that people who suffer from chronic diseases, they sometimes there's no choice but to get their legs amputated. So if the feet is supposed to be filthy, do people get excited once their leg is amputated? So do they feel good and say that, oh wow, I'm feeling much better now, a filthy part of my body is gone? Do you have such thing? No. So again, this nonsensical opposition of the so-called intellectual toward the Varnashram Dharma is it's all baseless in whatever forms they come. So here in the purport, Prabhupada also explains how even the different Varnas are dependent upon one another. Like the Vaishya class, they are required to give protection to cows to get sufficient milk and milk products. The Brahmana class, who are the intelligent class, they need to have nutritious food for their mental development. So in many ways, even the Brahmanas are dependent on the Vaishyas. So the different Varnas are not meant to fight against each other, but they are meant to work collectively to serve the entire society. That is the basic idea behind the Varnashram Dharma system. But of course, those who are hell-bent about destroying the Sanatan Dharma, they have been trying for more than 1,000 years, but they fail to understand that the word Sanatan means eternal. There is no birth, there's neither birth nor death for Sanatan Dharma. Now, getting back to this, we are approaching the concluding part. So a lot of people always try to paint that Bhagavad Gita is completely different from Thirukkural, and both have nothing to do with each other. So if we look at the Venn diagram, people always try to project the two as disjoint sets because they are hell-bent on a certain agenda. But even when we ask why they are against the Gita, then the only excuse they give is that the Varna system is discriminates based on birth. So it has already been proven that all those are baseless allegations, and their ignorance roots from the fact that they do not study from authorized sources like Bhagavad Gita as it is. They don't even know what the slokas say, and still they simply go by the knowledge gained from WhatsApp University. And interestingly, Vallur himself, he has stated how everyone should study the Bhagavad Gita. Because in Kural 432, he says, Yeppurul yaravai ketpinum, apporul meipurul kanbadarivu. So the biggest problem with our community, regardless of whether they are devotees or non-devotees, they always have this tendency of trying to learn about Hinduism or Sanatana Dharma by watching serials or by studying from WhatsApp forwards. They should always get proper knowledge from authorized sources. They should get books like Bhagavad Gita as it is and study what is actually stated there according to the original verses, rather than reading all these WhatsApp forwards. But that is a very big disease of our community. Then the so-called opponents of Sanatana Dharma, they are either ignorant or they simply want to spread falsehoods. And interestingly, those people who say that they are proud Tamils, they are staunch followers of Vallur, Thirukkural is their life and all that, they fail to understand that Vallur has glorified this virtue of honesty. He has mentioned so much about the importance of honesty, but still these so-called followers of Vallur, they spread falsehoods regarding Gita. They don't even know about these Kurals where Vallur has mentioned, he who speaks truth with all his heart is superior to those who make gifts and practice austerities. He also said, purity of body is produced by water and purity of mind by truthfulness. In Kural 299, Vallur says, all lamps of nature are not lamps. The lamp of truth is the lamp of the wise. Then he also says, amidst all that we have seen described as real excellence, there's nothing so good as truthfulness. So Vallur has also glorified the virtue of truth, but still those who claim to be followers of Vallur, their only business is to spread falsehoods regarding Gita. Either they don't know what is there in the Gita, or even knowingly they just want to pursue the agenda and spread falsehoods. So they are only they are not making Vallur proud in any way. So the real way of how we can see both the Gita and Thirukkural is like this. In set theory, if we draw a Venn diagram, this is how it should be. So as we saw even earlier, when we were talking about the no meat eating, Vallur viewed it from the perspective of mercy towards animals. But in Gita, we saw that, when we say that we should be merciful towards animals, then the so-called intellectuals will say, okay, then what about vegetables? Are you not killing them? Then for that, the explanation is given in Gita regarding the importance of making offerings and also to eat prasadam. So both the books complement each other. Then now back to the Purushartha concept, which you saw during the beginning. We know that in Bhagavatam, first canto, in chapter 5, there's this conversation between Narada Muni and Vyasadeva. We know from there how Vyasadeva got the inspiration to compose Srimad Bhagavatam. He was completely he was still not satisfied after composing so much literature. And then Narada Muni advised him that all that you have composed so far, those are only meant for the 3 or 4 Purusharthas, like Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. Even the portions regarding Moksha were not they were not sufficient still, because they were still lacking of Krishna Katha. So even beyond Moksha, it is Bhakti. So that is only possible when you convey about Krishna Katha. This is what Narada Muni told Vyasadev. So in the purport, Prabhupada has explained everything, like the three Purusharthas of Dharma, Artha, Kama, those are completely related to material life. So by following the Thirukkural, we can actually deal with our material life very well. But for to develop spiritual inquiry and also to engage in bhakti, we still need scriptures like Gita and Bhagavatam. So it is best to study everything in the proper spirit rather than discussing which is better than which, and there's no need to get involved in all those senseless arguments. But it is also important to counter those who try to spread falsehoods. So it is just my small attempt to do that through this session. And there are also some other Kurals mentioned by Valur, which are related to the Gita. In chapter 2, Sankhya Yoga, during the beginning, Krishna tries to convince Arjuna based on the concepts of body and soul. So in Kural 338, Valur says, the love of the soul to the body is like the love of a bird to its egg, which it flies away from and leaves empty. So from here, he tries to say that the soul will have to leave the body ultimately, the material body. So which means that Valur acknowledges the concept of body and soul. He also talks about birth and death. He says death is like sleep, birth is like awaking from it. Here it is very significant that Valur has referred to death in the beginning itself. He says death is like sleep and birth is like waking from it. So here he clearly talks about transmigration of souls, because once we die, once we give up the body, then we wake up in another body. So that clearly talks about transmigration of soul. And then another interesting verse, the last verse is, the last Kural is Kural 340. It seems as if the soul, which takes a temporary shelter in a body, had not attained her home. So he also says that as long as we are trapped in various material bodies, we are still homeless souls. So they say that there's no place like home. So we should always focus on how we can go home, go to Goloka, back to Godhead. So that's all. I've tried to establish the similarities, the various similarities between the teachings of Gita and Thirukkural. So it is best to study both, and there's no point in engaging in the senseless arguments of which is better than which. So that's all from me for today. Thank you all for attending. Hare Krishna.
Hari Bol. Fantastic. You can stop sharing. Yes. Hare Krishna. So, do any one of you got any question, any comment? How was his presentation?
Super, simply super.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes,
Prabhu. அற்புதமா நீங்க கிளாஸ் கொடுக்குறீங்க பிரபுஜி.
Prabhu. Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam.
Yeah, very very happy. அவர் மீண்டும் நிறைய நல்ல கிளாஸ் கொடுக்கணும் பிரபு. ஹரி போல், ஹரி கிருஷ்ணா. Thank you so much for such a wonderful arrangement class. I also get to know of many of the verses of Thirukkural versus Bhagavad Gita. Very nice. Thank you.
Yes.
YouTubeல போட்டுருங்க பிரபு. ஷேர் பண்ணுங்க. Bye.
ரொம்ப நல்லா இருக்கு பிரபு.
Yep.
ரொம்ப நல்லா இருக்கு, ரொம்ப இன்ட்ரெஸ்டிங்கா இருக்கு. திருக்குறள் இன்னைக்கு தான் நல்லா ரெண்டும் சிமிலாரிட்டிஸ் எல்லாம் நல்லா கேட்டா நல்லா இருக்கு பிரபு. இன்னும் நல்லா கண்டினியூ பண்ணுங்க கிளாஸ், ரொம்ப நல்லா இருக்கு பிரபு. ஹரே கிருஷ்ணா பிரபு.
Hare Krishna.
It's all started actually when the education system was like this Macaulay principle, when I think somewhere in 1852, when this Britishers, India was under the Britishers rule, and he used to use this famous phrase in order to get a fruitful field, we have to plow. And for that to introduce English in the heart of the Indians, we need to clear the Gurukula, temple, priest, and one more, the Shastras, and they should not practice this. And we introduce convent. So this was from Macaulay, the Britisher who came, and he saw that everything was, India was so spiritual. And there was estimated about 7,050 villages in India at that time, and 750,000 villages in India then. Then out of it, about 732,000 of Gurukulas in every. So they are like very religious and spiritual people. So British already know how to take control of India, and later Nehru has supported the British education system, and he introduced in the constitution the clause 13A, 13B, where other religion, Christian, all these Muslims, etc., can practice, can have madrasa, can do the teaching freely, can do the conversion, everything freely, but not the Hindus. All the Hindus' activity has to stop for a better India. This was Nehru. I don't know what is happening now, Prabhu. Sorry, just to go back to a little bit of history when I learned this sometimes back. So we need more Hare Krishna activities to open the eye in the Indian citizens. Yeah, people like Dr. Jinesh was very wonderful. He just simply hit this DMK fellas, DMK fellas flat, and even the edist, I think, has already succumbed to him, his research paper. Simply good. I salute you, sir.
Thank you,
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Wow. Wonderful, wonderful.